The man looked at the full bowl of potato risotto. Seeing no one around, he couldn't resist crouching over the table to devour it. His dog-like eating manners were accidentally witnessed by a reporter. The reporter found it hard to believe. Who would have thought the once undefeated legend of the boxing world could be reduced to such a pitiful state? With the outbreak of the Great Depression, Loki, having failed in his investments, could only move his family from a villa into a slum unit of just a few square meters. Having a full meal each day had become a luxury. His wife could only dilute the milk at the bottom of the bottle with water until it was full again. That was the family's food for the day. In this era of economic collapse, the dock was crowded with job seekers, but the foreman only needed 9. Loki wasn't chosen. He could only leave in disappointment. Arriving home, he found his son sitting sadly in the corner, a sausage lying on the table. Loki immediately understood what had happened. He quickly took his son back to the shop and returned the sausage to the owner. On the way back, his son said his friend had been sent away because his parents couldn't afford to feed him. Loki fell silent for a long time, then crouched down and promised his son he would definitely take care of them. But that was easier said than done. Fortunately, his manager arranged a boxing match for him, $50 whether he won or lost. Before the match, the manager discovered Loki had concealed a hand injury. He was furious, but with no other option, Loki had to fight. Due to the fractured hand, the match was extremely ugly to watch. Facing the crowd's dissatisfaction, Loki threw a right punch, but accidentally hit the top of his opponent's head. Though he endured excruciating pain and barely won the match, not only did he not receive the prize money, the association also revoked his boxing license. Losing his job meant the gas and electricity at home would be cut off. His wife suggested sending the children to relatives. Loki flatly refused. He had promised his son he wouldn't send them away. He took out shoe polish and asked his wife to paint it over his cast so no one would notice his injured right hand. He could still try his luck at the docks. A few days later, the electrician cut off their power. They owed 4 months of bills. If he didn't cut the power, even the electrician would lose his job. Without electricity, they could only use candles. Without heating, they tore down fences for firewood. Yet even so, the children fell ill. As a mother, she couldn't bear to see her children suffer with her. In utter despair, she took the children to her relatives. When Loki returned, they had a heated argument, and he stormed out. His wife thought he was leaving her for good, but in reality, he had swallowed his last shred of pride and gone to the relief office, where he received $19 in aid. But it still wasn't enough to pay the bills. Finally, he entered the opulent boxing association and begged his former superiors and colleagues to spare him some money to help him through this difficult time. Some pitied Loki and offered help, while others treated him with cold indifference. Finally, he stood before his manager, tears streaming down his face.
Jesus Christ. How short are you?
The manager helped him make up the remaining amount, allowing Loki to bring his children home. The Loki family barely survived the harsh winter. One day, his manager found him, saying he'd secured a warm-up match for him. His opponent was the world's second-ranked boxer. If he participated, he'd get $250, win or lose. This large sum was undoubtedly a lifeline for Loki's family. Loki's return to the ring excited the fans, but his opponent was the world's #2 boxer, and no one in the arena favored Loki. After all, the opponent was so tall and strong. From the start, the world #2 launched a fierce offense, using his long reach to suppress Loki entirely. Loki could only defend and endure hits. The opponent landed a heavy punch that sent Loki to the ground. If he had just stayed down, he could have easily taken the $250, but Loki didn't. He staggered to his feet. The hardships of life hadn't broken him. What were a few punches? Since his opponent had longer limbs, he closed the distance for close quarters combat. Nicknamed the Bulldog, he grew more ferocious as he fought. If endurance was his strength, he'd let his opponent attack, while he waited for his chance to land one heavy punch of his own. A brilliant counterattack ignited the arena. Even his manager shouted in disbelief and excitement. He didn't know that working on the docks had long turned Loki's former weakness into a strength. Now his injured right hand had become strong and powerful. As his opponent fell and couldn't get up, Loki had defeated the world's #2. This once humiliated boxer had created a miracle with his injured right hand. Loki became famous overnight because of this fight. When Loki returned home, he hung his head, pretending to be dejected. His family moved to comfort him, but he suddenly looked up with a bright smile. He had won. That day, they finally had a full meal. The next day, Loki returned to the docks. It seemed his luck had changed. The foreman picked him immediately, but as Loki prepared to move bricks, the foreman stopped him. It turned out the foreman had read about Loki in the newspaper and asked why he had returned for manual labor. Loki said after receiving the $250, he paid off his debts and had only $5 left. The foreman laughed, said nothing more, and let him work. Soon after, the manager arranged more fights for Loki and even advanced him a large bonus. But his wife wasn't happy. She feared Loki would get injured again. She went to the manager's house to complain about him disrupting disrupting their stable life. But when the manager opened the door, she was stunned. He had sold almost everything in his house just to help Loki return to the top. The manager approached the club owner to secure more opportunities for Loki. Loki finally began systematic training, working harder than ever before. In the ring, his punches were sharp and fierce. The biggest improvement was his resilience. After all, he couldn't let his family go hungry or cold again. He clung to his opponents like a bulldog in the ring, seizing any chance to knock them out with one punch. But relying solely on counter-punching after taking hits would eventually meet its match. When facing a tall, strong boxer, Loki struggled. His opponent targeted Loki's ribs, and finally, a heavy punch broke one of them. The pain of the broken rib forced Loki to clinch. The referee separated them, but when the next round began, the opponent continued attacking his ribs. Though Loki pretended to be fierce, he couldn't withstand it. A punch to his face even sent his mouthguard flying. But in that instant, images flashed through Loki's mind. His children hungry and cold, the relief soup they lined up for daily, his wife's worried face. Loki snapped back to reality, stared at his hulking opponent, and suddenly laughed. Perhaps it was a mocking laugh at life's cruelty compared to the suffering he'd endured. This injury was nothing, but his opponent was completely unnerved by Loki's laugh. He had never seen someone so fearless. He began to retreating like a scared child. Loki pressed his advantage, each punch venting years of pent-up frustration. Finally, the young, bull-like boxer was completely defeated by Loki. The next day, Loki went to the relief office, bruised and swollen. Everyone looked at him curiously, but he wasn't there to collect money. He was there to repay it. Having earned money, he returned the relief funds he had previously received. Loki's story was widely reported. In this era of the Great Depression, filled with disillusioned people, Loki became a hero in the eyes of the common folk. But Loki's next opponent was the world's top-ranked champion, Bel, notorious for his vicious and ruthless style. He had already killed 2 opponents in the ring. Autopsies revealed their brains had been literally shaken to pieces. A gruesome death. The club owner tried to persuade Loki to withdraw, but Loki said,
"In my profession, and it's my profession, I'm a little more fortunate."
The club owner had no reply, and could only arrange a pre-fight reception with the champion. The champion, young and having enjoyed a life of luxury, was arrogant and conceited. Loki went to greet him, but the champion provocatively said,
"You are far too pretty to be a widow.
That's not nice, Max. Not nice.
Maybe I can comfort you after he's gone."
Hey! I said shut your goddamn mouth, you punk!
It was the champion's usual tactic to intimidate opponents and break their psychological defenses. A seasoned boxer like Loki wasn't threatened, but his wife was terrified. She feared losing her husband. Seeing the children play fighting with Loki, she lost her temper for the first time. Though she scolded the children, her anger was really directed at her husband. She couldn't understand why Loki would take such a dangerous fight. Of course, she didn't know that Loki now carried the hopes of so many people. On the day of the fight, his family was somber, as if seeing him off for the last time. This mood weighed heavily on Loki, making it hard to breathe. His wife went to church as usual to pray for her husband, but when she entered, she found it filled with people. They were also praying for Loki. In that moment, his wife finally understood who her husband was fighting for. Before the match, Loki was restless. Just then, his wife found him.
So you just remember who you are. You're the Bulldog of Bergen and the pride of New Jersey. You're everybody's hope.
With her encouragement, Loki regained his confidence. When he entered the arena, the crowd fell silent. Even the commentator deliberately lowered his voice, a sign of great respect. But when Loki stepped into the ring, thunderous cheers suddenly erupted. When the champion emerged and saw this, his face changed. The match began. Loki launched a fierce assault, but the champion, tall and strong, constantly pressed Loki's head down, sneering as if toying with a child. But Loki remained unaffected. He excelled at using agile footwork to get in close and pummel longer-limbed opponents. In the third round, the champion attacked Loki's previously broken ribs. Loki pretended to be fine, but turned away, nearly passing out from the pain. The next round, the champion glared fiercely. Clearly, he intended to end the match. Every punch carried his full force. After just 2 heavy hits, Loki was dizzy, his nose bleeding, but Loki didn't fall. He carried the hopes of his family and all the disillusioned people. Loki fought back more fiercely, landing powerful counters on the champion's face, stunning him. The mind games planned since before the match were useless. The champion cursed in frustration. As the match continued, Loki stopped defending, his rapid punches repeatedly striking the champion's face. The champion was backed into a corner, enraged. The crowd chanted Loki's name. Victory seemed within reach. The champion's strong body could no longer endure. In desperation, the champion punched Loki in the leg, a severe foul that angered the entire arena. The manager rushed into the ring in fury, and the round was forced to end. The manager told Loki, "Stay away from him this final round. He's fouled multiple times. Just drag it out till the end, and you win." But once in the ring, Loki didn't retreat. He had never retreated all these years. The two exchanged blow after blow. The spectators were on edge, their hearts in their throats, praying for Loki. Even his wife, who usually avoided listening to broadcasts, came to the radio. Loki's injured ribs took many hits. Just then, the champion found an opening, dodged Loki's punch, lifted Loki's chin, and landed a heavy punch that sent Loki staggering back. Everyone stood up. Loki's vision blurred, staring at the approaching champion. He suddenly remembered footage he'd seen. This was how the champion had killed his opponents. The next punch would surely kill him too. In his dazed state, images of his family flashed before his eyes.